Now, just very quickly, I want to get Vanessa's comment on this because this is James Karaoke at the UN Security Council, or the UN General Assembly, rather. He's speaking about the Security Council and talking about Security Council reform. He said that since we last debated the need for Security Council reform here in the General Assembly, we've grappled with increasing conflict around the world, the impact of Russia's illegal war. We believe permanent African representation on the Council is long overdue, and we support new permanent seats for India, Germany, Japan, and Brazil. And he said we also support an expansion of the non-permanent category of membership, taking the total Council membership into the mid-20s. President, since the General Assembly last met on this topic, we reaffirm our position regarding the use of the veto. And this is really the key point, because this is why Britain is pushing so hard for reform, so-called reform of the Security Council. It's the use of the veto by China and Russia in particular. And he said, for our own part, the United Kingdom has not exercised our right to use the veto since 1989. We remain committed not to vote against a credible draft resolution to prevent or end a mass atrocity, and we encourage all states to join us. And the hypocrisy here is off the charts as usual, because of course, although they didn't vote against the recent motions in the Security Council with respect to Gaza, they did abstain, and they certainly did nothing to prevent the United States using its veto. They're quite happy for the United States to use its veto when it suits, but they're never happy, Vanessa, for Russia or China to use theirs.
Well, that's because basically everything that the UN Security Council is endorsing is in the favor of France, the US, and the UK. So they basically have no reason to use a veto, whereas Russia and China, that are pushing back against the neo-colonialist projects, whether it's in Syria or elsewhere, do have a need to use the veto. I mean, it's kind of, UN Security Council for dummies. It's incredible that they think this argument can even gather traction. It's unbelievable.
Yes, but sticking with the UN General Assembly, we need to remind ourselves of Netanyahu's speech recently.
Yeah, so this was on the 22nd of September. I'd like to just play it again, just to start off what I'm talking about.
A few years ago, I stood here with a red marker to show the curse, a great curse, the curse of a nuclear Iran. But today I bring this marker to show a great blessing, the blessing of a new Middle East between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and our other neighbors. We will not only bring down barriers between Israel and our neighbors, we'll build a new corridor of peace and prosperity that connects Asia through the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, to Europe. This is an extraordinary change, a monumental change, another pivot of history. But I also believe that we must not give the Palestinians a veto over new peace treaties with Arab states. Sanctions must be snapped back. And above all, Iran must face a credible nuclear threat.
So what I wanted to talk about today, Mike, you mentioned the sabotage of Nord Stream. And I believe, after listening to Robert Kennedy Jr. speaking about Israel and the fact that it is their bulwark, basically, in the Middle East and preventing the rise of the BRICS countries, and in particular Russia and China, and that includes the Belt and Road Initiative. The Gaza situation, or the Palestine situation, is about many things, but I think part of it is about securing monopoly for the US and their allies over energy and resource transport and supply, particularly to Europe. So what is he talking about here? In my opinion, he's talking about the Indian Economic Corridor, going from Mumbai through Dubai, Riyadh, Al Haditha, Haifa, of course, in the occupied territories, to Piraeus. Now, Piraeus is interesting in Greece. We've spoken about this before, the fact that actually China has substantial investment in Piraeus and, of course, in Haifa. So what is this all about? If we look at the next slide, it shows basically Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, US President Joe Biden, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the day of the G20 summit in New Delhi, India, September the 9th, 2023, so about 10 days or so before Netanyahu's UNGA speech. If we look at an article in the Indian media, The Week, this is, I think, dated the 24th of September, so 2 days after. A passage for India, The Week reports from Israel's Haifa port, the corridor, so they're talking about this Indian economic corridor, bypassing the Suez Canal, could change trade dynamics in the region. I think this is more viable than the Ben Gurion Canal. Having looked at that, it's met with quite a few obstacles in the past. So I think this is the more likely strategic plan. Now, if we look now at, this is basically the Levant Basin, which you can see runs from the north of Syria down to basically to Egypt, encompassing Lebanon and occupied Palestinian territories, including Gaza. The Oslo Accord in 1995, so the second Oslo Accord, gave the Palestinian Authority maritime jurisdiction up to 20 nautical miles from the coast of Gaza. In 1999, a 25-year contract, which is up this year, in 2024, with British Gas Group and the PA, for gas exploration off the coast of Palestine. The Gaza Marine is 1 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and that was discovered basically 19 miles, so within that region, and then under the control of the Palestinian Authority in 1999. The whole Levant Basin is 122 trillion cubic meters. Since 2007, of course, with the Israeli blockade of Gaza, Israel controls the offshore gas reserves. So Gaza has had absolutely no benefit from this discovery of natural gas. It's also worth mentioning that Israel has control of the Medjed oil and gas field located inside the occupied West Bank territory. So I'm going to have a quick look at this. This is the Belt and Road Initiative. And you can see, if you go to the next slide, I'll zoom in a little bit on that central area. You can see the ports of Latakia, Tartus, Tripoli, Beirut, and then going down to where I've marked the port of Haifa, which is pivotal to the Indian economic corridor. Now, Latakia, we'll talk about in a second. Tartus, of course, is pretty much under the control of the Russians. Tripoli is under the control of British intelligence, largely in northern Lebanon. Beirut, we know in 2020 in August, was blown up and is no longer operational. And that, of course, leaves Haifa. So let's have a look at what I was talking about regarding Latakia. I couldn't find a better map to show the M4 highway that crosses from the northeast of Syria and all those areas that are under the control of the United States occupying forces, their various proxies, Turkey and the Turkish US proxies in the northwest that you can see there in Idlib. That means fundamentally that at the moment, the area north of the M4 heading towards Latakia in that northwest section is effectively under the control of Erdogan and Turkey through its various proxy militia that control northwest Idlib. So Latakia at the moment is also out of use. If we move on also, I'll show, I missed one of the maps. But the central area of Syria, of course, is recently under attack by the ISIS proxies being directed by the United States and their allies to take control again of the gas fields in central Syria to the east of Homs. So there is a general strategy right now to prevent Belt and Road Initiative in particular. And again, remember what Robert Kennedy said in his statement about how useful Israel is precisely for doing this. In 2022, in October, so a year before Netanyahu's speech, Al Monitor obtained information from Palestinian and Egyptian officials about the success of Egyptian mediation in pushing Israel to allow the start of extracting natural gas off the coast of the Gaza Strip. And it's notable that Egypt has been, while ostensibly protesting the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza into the Sinai, it has also been instrumental in preventing humanitarian aid entering Gaza during the last 6 weeks, and also allowing people out of Gaza for humanitarian aid and hospital aid inside Egypt itself. This was an article very recently, US to push Israel on allowing Gaza offshore gas reserves to revitalize Palestinian economy. I will blatantly say that that is a lie. If we move on to the next slide of the article. So this was on November the 20th, 2023. Amos Hochstein, US President Joe Biden's energy security advisor, is currently visiting Israel to discuss preventing a second front from opening between Israel and Lebanon amid ongoing clashes with Hezbollah, as well as potential economic revitalization plans for Gaza centered around undeveloped offshore natural gas fields. Again, I will call that out as absolute bunkum. They're securing the north of Gaza and even now central and southern Gaza in order to secure the exploration rights for Gaza's gas field and actually the entire Levant gas field. Hochstein was most recently in Bahrain, where he discussed the opportunity to develop offshore gas fields on behalf of the Palestinians as part of plans for post-war Gaza that we know don't involve Palestinians at all. And of course, Bahrain has been very vocal in condemning Hamas. I can't think why. Saudi Arabia, of course, Egypt and Bahrain will be strategic partners in the economic corridor. And of course, this is one of the fears. This is the article in the Indian Express. As Israel-Hamas conflict, again spun as Israel-Hamas rather than Israel-Arab or Israel-Palestinian, gets deadlier, what happens to the India-Europe economic corridor? So obviously they're expressing fears that the conflict could interfere with their plans for ethnically cleansing Gaza and securing those offshore gas exploration rights.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you very much for that. That was very interesting. Now,